Alrighty, I think we're live. All right. Well, I'm Ken Lane. I'm the API evangelist, and I'm here with my friend Phil to do a hangout. So I'm gonna let Phil introduce himself. Go for it, sir.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, my name's Phil Leggetter. I'm a person who works in developer relations. I've spent a lot of time looking at real-time technologies, and that's why we've jumped on a hangout to chinwag about what's happening in the space right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, selfishly, I'm diving back into what I consider my real-time research, kind of refreshing it, going through some of the companies that I know are doing interesting things with real-time. And so I'm kind of selfishly wanting to pick your brain. And I can't remember, it seems like we met back in what, 2011, something like that, at a Twilio party. I mean, we met online, but in person. Was that 2011, 12? I can't remember.
2012 TwilioCon, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work out, but we'll keep going because the broadcast is going and it seems to pick up. So
okay, all right, I'll keep speaking.
Yeah, if I go away, just keep talking and I'll be right back.
Yeah, 2012 TwilioCon, yeah, when we
Yeah,
met. But it was programmable web before that. That kind of kicked things off, I think.
yeah, I believe so. And so we've always kind of been, I guess, API evangelist, developer advocacy kind of brethren. You more from the real time, me from, I don't know, whatever it is I pay attention to. But anyways, so I mean, really, I really want to pick your brain on just where the space is at. I mean, that's the last 3 years you and I have been kind of going back and forth when we can, and I've had you at several API strats to discuss. But give me the state of things right now when it comes to real time, and start it out with like, what is real time, and here's where we're at. Just give me your take.
Yeah. So I mean, that age-old question, what is real time? There's been a few posts recently. I posted one on the Pusher blog post about what is real time, and the guys at Deepstream.io, who are actually ex-Kaplan employees, where I got into real time, they've published a post on what is real time, and it really depends on the context. Here, the point is that we can instantly interact with each other, right? And it's audio and video. So, and we need to be able to maintain the context of the conversation. So if Chrome crashes, it breaks that experience that we're having, right? So that's the most important thing. It's about delivery of data, whether it's audio, video, pure data that's displayed in some sort of textual format, that maintains that experience and that context of whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a chat, whether it's a trading system, whether it's a visualization that you're taking data from and making decisions on top of. So it's really about, an event takes place, there's some data, and it needs to be delivered over the wire, whatever the wire is, whether it's the internet, whether it's any sort of network, to a user, to another system, within a timely manner to maintain that context. If it's delivered beyond whatever the time limit is for that data, then that experience or that deadline is missed, and things degrade or things just completely fail. So does that explain it? Is that a base? It's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's something that means something different to different people. But yeah. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's the soft real time. Well, there's the hard real time, which is the traditional, embedded real time systems people, and they mean, a minute amount of time, a hard deadline. If the data is not delivered, then the system breaks. There's this firm real time where the system doesn't break, but as the later the data is being delivered from the point of the event taking place to it being received, then the experience degrades. And there's soft real time, which is generally what we mean on the web, right? We mean if you receive a tweet within 30 seconds, it's not going to break an experience within a conversation. I'd say we're firm real time now. If something goes wrong, as I said, it breaks that experience. So yeah, and this isn't me. I haven't defined this. This is just, I don't know, someone's updated Wikipedia, and it seems to make sense. Yeah, firm and hard definitions of real time, and at
Like
least it's
that
something to
makes
work
sense.
from. Yeah.
So I mean, it means different things to different people. Like my goal is to help people understand the space, like what it is. I guess this is going to be more from a technical audience because I mean, really, average user is not going to care about real time, right? They're just going to care about what it is, right?
Yeah. They just
So
want
I mean,
yeah, they just want that experience.
and so technologically, what is real time right now? As far as is it that experience? And are there like several protocols, technologies, leading ones? How is this being achieved by the majority of people? Is it through SMS? Is it through XMPP? Is it web sockets? What's the specific technologies and things that you're seeing out there?
There's a lot of proprietary stuff that's going on, and I think we need that to be standardized. I mean, there's a talk that I give quite frequently on real time now and beyond, and still in the beyond, I'm talking about the need for standardization around some of these things. XMPP has been around for a long time, and there's even I think they're called XSF, XMPP Standards Foundation. I've bumped into them in the past at what was that, at FOSDEM, and they were kind of like, well, why has XMPP not become the standard for real time? And I don't honestly know why that hasn't happened. And it's a protocol, and you can use XMPP over a number of different transport mechanisms. But for some reason, it hasn't become the standard. There's proprietaries, the Socket.io, which has its underlying protocol now. There's, Pusher itself, who I used to work for. They've got their own protocol, and not many people have adopted it, but a few have taken the software as a service and made it a self-installed option. There's, Signal, the Microsoft solution. They've again created their own like messaging underlying protocol, and they use different transports. So what is the standard right now? I don't know. I mean, I think we're lucky in terms of WebRTC for audio and video and peer-to-peer connectivity and data, that at least the standard has actually, there's obviously been a use case for it, but the standard has come along at the time where the technology can adopt it, and it will, that is going to become the standard for audio and video, and hopefully peer-to-peer connectivity with data as well. And I mean, a lot of people are talking about that it doesn't need to just be peer-to-peer connectivity. It's, a peer can be any device, so it could be client-server communication too. So we'll see. So I mean, I think generally in terms of, so back in 2010, 2011, where we started having the conversations, there were only a few like real-time technologies available. The number has increased, but again, still the main ones that are used are, our Socket.io, our Fay. There's still some proprietary ones, such as whatever Kasing use and whatever Kaplan use, that are used by financial organizations or enterprise. And then these software as a service solutions have come along, such as PubNub and Pusher and Firebase. And I'd say they're still kind of leading the charge there. But again, they've got their own proprietary protocols. But at least, I guess, Pusher, their libraries are open source. PubNub, their libraries are open source. Firebase is, I believe, reasonably closed, and now obviously part of Google. So we'll see where things go there. I think the interesting thing is that both PubNub and Pusher are focusing on being a data stream network or data distribution network, which is feels more like it's a broadcast solution. You fire one piece of data at them, and they deal with the scaling, the distributing it, the broadcasting that data. So great for news and media organizations, distributing data at scale. Firebase seemed to be more, the move from that everyone's seen Firebase as the natural move from Pars is interesting, because for me, Pars wasn't really a real-time platform. It was a backend as a service. Now, Firebase has always had real-time baked in. It's been one of the core parts of it, but never potentially seen as the main benefit. It's more seen now by people as a backend as a service with, great for mobile. And interestingly enough, I spoke to James Tamplin years ago, in fact, 2 years ago probably, and he was kind of saying the real time is just a fundamental part of it, but ultimately, mobile is probably one of the main driving factors around adoption. So,
and what kind of objects or elements or other drivers of that? Is it messaging? Is it push notifications? Is it videos? Is it what are what's the carrot that people are going for on mobile when they're looking for real time? Would you say is the leading areas?
I think it's experience, which is, again, it's not this technical thing. It's just that, again, going back to the talks that I gave, and I mean, James Tamplin covered this before, and he said it much better than I did it. I think it was a Google I/O or certainly a Google event. That the experiences that we're seeing in Facebook, and this is what he says. He said, so real time is making social even more social. It's improving the experiences that we see in these social networks and applications. It's making collaborative applications or productivity applications more productive. Again, you look at something like Google Docs, the way that you can now write a draft and then jump in and collaborate. And it's fundamental to experiences like applications such as Uber deliver. That it's great that generally the experience you get is great, but the fact that you can instantly book a taxi, see it coming towards you, share details about your ETA with people, kind of real time is fundamental to that experience. So the point there is that these three very mainstream applications and many others have had this real time factor that, as you said, that the consumer doesn't go, oh, this real time experience is fundamental, but whatever those experiences are that we know are driven by real time technologies has set that expectation, so that when they go and use some other taxi application and it doesn't provide that real-time feedback, or they try and collaborate, or they write a document online and they want to collaborate with others on it, and they can't do that in real time with others, or they've got a social app and the page refreshes every so often, or on mobile they have to pull to refresh, that experience now feels broken. So I think it's more of the user-led requirements and demands rather than technology, which makes complete sense, really.
Well, I mean that I think goes with, I don't know, a lot of why web APIs and REST stumbled for a long time is people were focusing it purely on the technical, and then once we really focus on the delivery of the resources to get users what they need, and that whole experience-based designed over dogmatic REST and resources and all of that. So it seems like real time's figuring it out as well, I think.
Yeah, you've got to bridge it, haven't you? You've got to bridge the technology benefits, and then ultimately if you're building user-facing applications, and it's not, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure within internal systems or with systems like B2B, there are benefits in having that technology, but ultimately there's still a user that has demands on a system or demands in terms of the application. And that's what I've been trying to do with real-time APIs. Talk about, firstly, that developers are polling APIs anyway. So push the data to an endpoint or to a client whenever it's available. So start offering these real-time APIs, and then moving through to the fact that if you're building a client-facing application, a user-facing application, that if you're not providing these real-time APIs, that developers are having to fudge, poll APIs to try and get the data to deliver those real-time experiences that the users really want, that the consumers really want. So I'm going to still keep talking about that, even if no one's listening yet.
This is something, I mean, I've seen API providers that are out there that have like, hey, we have a Firebase extension or integration, or as part of our API, because we're one little piece of that experience. We're a document tool, we're a messaging tool or whatever, and rather than reinventing the wheel, we're using Firebase, and we've done a lot of the legwork to get it out for you in there. So that's really, I mean, we know about companies like Twitter has a streaming API, and kind of some leading ones have it. Is this something that all API providers should be considering as kind of a layer to what they do already?
I think if they're if ultimately the consumers of those APIs are then trying to build user experiences, then yes. Or if there is a clear, timely nature to the data that they're providing, then yes. Why would they not provide that? I think going back to API Strat and the beyond HTTP session, the tricky thing there is it seems that API builders, API providers aren't as comfortable with non-HTTP. And there's also a barrier, specifically in enterprise, in terms of consuming some of these things. Like, John Sheehan was saying that webhooks, he feels that webhooks aren't being adopted because it means opening up an endpoint into the enterprise that an HTTP request can be made into. And that is a barrier. I don't think delivery from server to server, I think that's a barrier. I think client delivery is less of a barrier. So which is potentially why some of these software as a service companies that offer delivery to clients aren't seeing it as such of a problem, because networks allow a streaming HTTP connection generally over port 80 or port 443. The WebSocket connection can be made over port 80 or port 443. And these real-time technologies now will also deal with fallbacks to less real-time transports like HTTP long polling or HTTP JSON P polling, which is basically dynamically injecting a script tag, or just polling if need be. So I think that's probably why these software as a service companies that are obviously an API really, but it's not a generic API that any company can provide at the minute. But the technology is out there that makes the client delivery to server to client delivery possible. Whereas obviously, generally with APIs, you're thinking, I offer a RESTful endpoint, I'm going to allow webhooks, and it's server to server delivery. And then there are more barriers. It feels for some reason there are more barriers there. And again, John Sheehan just said developers are happy with HTTP. They understand HTTP. There aren't really, as you kind of said, what are the standards now? Are there really lots of standards in place for streaming or for ultimately you could just say streaming, no matter what the transport is over. So maybe not. Maybe we need those standards.
Yeah, I feel like real time as a larger umbrella, webhooks as a kind of sub umbrella, both have suffered from lack of leadership. Maybe maybe it's there's some good organizational leadership, but maybe specific standards, having champions that are out there really doing the dog and pony show, getting people excited and all of that. I mean, webhooks seems like it's just all over the place. It doesn't even seem like there's any organization to the world.
No, and everybody does it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to track on webhooks. I have a specific research project, and I have seen no rhyme or reason. I have what I consider gathering the common building blocks, and it's very difficult when it comes to webhooks because of how people are doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, and the benefits of that, that standardization, that you get common libraries you can use, and common formats, common parsers, common converters from one format to another. We just don't have that because there isn't a standard.
Well, and I think part of it for me also is, I mean, one of the big lessons of API is the opening up of the firewall and learning how to operate on the open internet, which is very, very fucking scary for a lot of people and the enterprises. And so poking those holes it just can't happen overnight. They're not like these startups or these SaaS providers, and it takes a lot more time. So
I was going to say, some of the other interesting stuff in this space is like Twilio's IP messaging. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned earlier, pre-call around the move towards messaging. I mean, what are you seeing there at the minute? And you're obviously seeing Twilio IP messaging.
Yeah, I mean, I think just messaging in general, as a vehicle for experience, and whether it's that Slack, the momentum that Slack has, and the whole bot kind of injection thing. I think building on the momentum that is Twitter, or was Twitter. I think voice is trying to be, when I think of Siri on our
Yeah.
iPhones. I'm not so excited, but Alexa, I built an API for API Strat with Nico and voice to, to the API and back again. I think voice has some new possibilities when it comes to that real time, the emotions that come around that experience that you talk about. So I think, messaging bots, voice potentially not as, and then as well as some virtualization and containerization stuff. I think all of that really, with messaging kind of being the tip of the spear, has some interesting opportunities. I don't know what it's going to look like though. So
Yeah, something's definitely going to. Well, I mean, I've started to see a bunch of stuff. When I said that I was available for work, a few people got in touch, and there was definitely a trend towards messaging. And obviously, because I've done the real time evangelism for a while, a few companies got. There's a company called Converse.ai, a guy called Tony's that heading up that. He's done. Interestingly enough, he's done a lot of the virtualization in the past. He's seen the trend towards conversation, and Converse AI look really interesting. He's out in San Francisco at the moment, but he's based in Edinburgh, near to where I am. So, and that's a really interesting solution in terms of taking conversations from all these different platforms, from Slack, from SMS from various providers, to real-time messaging providers, to intercom, and bringing those all into one conversation platform and letting you say interact from Slack to SMS via this platform. I think that's really interesting. There's another solution, Footprint, and I think the focus there is more enterprise. As Footprint, I'll send you the details, maybe a few details around these things. Yeah, and again, that's more conversation focused, but giving larger enterprises a voice into WhatsApp or into whatever platform they seem to be using. Nexmo have a chat API, which is kind of like one chat API to rule them all, and underneath they can provide access to Viber, WhatsApp, WeChat, and a whole bunch of messaging solutions, but through their single API, which is really exciting. Twilio, obviously, with their IP messaging. There's loads of these, like I think there's a product hunt the other day, the invisible apps, which is about these bots or integrations and so on, whether they're SMS driven or whether they're Slack driven. There's lots of stuff happening in that space. Again, with the real time talks that I give, like last year there were 550 million or 600 million monthly active users on WeChat. How many is it? Slack have 500,000, is it at the minute?
Yeah, something like that.
Only going to increase. So it's massive. I'm still not that sure about, from the user experience, that command line. I think there's going to be a hybrid, and I've seen a few interesting hybrid solutions. I think there's got to be a hybrid. So a platform like Slack is going to have to offer this hybrid approach, potentially, depending on the user they're targeting.
Maybe Google will bring back Google Wave.
I used to love Google Wave.
I love it.
Yeah, back at Kaplan 2000 and whenever it was, 2009, 2010, we used Google Wave. It was a great idea, but it was tricky to follow conversations, and I know you could drag the timeline and see the change. I don't think people were quite ready for it yet, but
definitely not. The messaging platform as a platform, I think that was the first vision of it for me, is you can inject apps into the timeline and the conversation and all that. I was running Google okay, we can't badmouth Google, apparently. it cuts out. It's the NSA filter on the thing. But anyways, I was running Google I/O when they announced, and so they had me doing all these super secret projects, and I was pretty bitter when they dropped it, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. I mean, we used to do all our meetings in it, and then I don't know. I guess because Kaplan were a real-time company, and it was great to see it outside and very public. It didn't But I mean, we were forever looking. It was used in the technology at Kaplan was used in finance, and we were forever looking for something outside of finance. Just to, as developers, some people were interested in finance, the majority weren't. So it was just great to try and see the technology being used elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, bringing it back to the messaging. I'm really optimistic for what can be injected into the message stream, and I want to, but I feel like there needs to be a lot more critical mass of APIs out there that are really simple, very one use, but very meaningful to end users.
Right.
And I kind of feel like that's my job, is to help bring those to the surface, get people creating them, so that you can do recall. I mean, we need open data on politics, down to the like city and neighborhood level, so that you can ask those results when you're in the messaging in your chat, or whatever.
Yeah.
We need, really good image tooling. We need kind of the next gen Instagram. We need a lot of these resources, I think, like we needed, all these resources for API to work and mobile to work. For, I think, this next wave, we're going to need a lot of them. But I think messaging is going to be the kind of tip of that spear. I'm hoping. We'll see.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm just really interested to see what, as I said, Converse AI looks good as a platform for conversations with a human element as well. Understanding that in the customer service scenario, that you can't always rely entirely on AI, the artificial intelligence. You're going to need a human factor, and they've got a hook for that, which I think differentiates them. But I'm not out in San Francisco, so I'm sure there's 100 companies that have got investment around this at the minute. And Telegram, we haven't mentioned Telegram. I hadn't heard of them until a month ago, but I'm again probably just out of the scene or something. But they seem to be pretty big on that. They had a bot announcement last year sometime, so be interesting to see whether they become whether more consumers start to use it, and then if there are more users, then it might bring developers over.
So monetization at this level, I don't. I was just kind of thinking about Snapchat and then advertising, and it seems like a lot of these messaging platforms go towards, I feel like that's the mistake Twitter made, is just going all in. I mean, you should have an advertising platform, but they should have collaborated with their ecosystem, come up with some other revenue stream.
Yeah.
But when I'm building an app as a developer, I mean, how do I make money off of that experience? I mean, are you seeing anything out there, or is that not even in your wheelhouse?
No, to put it simply, yeah.
You're more at the bits and bytes level rather than the.
Well, don't get me wrong. I work in developer relations. There's a marketing angle to it, right? So I need to understand what drives the business. Yeah, I think it's really tricky. I mean, so with Quicker, like way back 2010, the thing that was very similar to Pusher and PubNub, we were considering injecting, advertising content into the streams of data. But that's what Twitter has done, except there is a UI representation of that. I mean, if you start to do that at the data level, it's impossible. How do you write into the terms and conditions that these bits of data need to be shown as a developer consumes it? Just that's not going to work. I genuinely have no idea. I mean, obviously with things like Slack, then they can control, when you can control the UI in some way, then you can inject advertising in a more traditional sense. I'm not a big fan of advertising.
Yeah, I think
advertising must also hang Google Chrome, Hangouts.
there's like 3 clicks to get back in. I have to click little buttons. I'm getting really good at it though. Anyways, yeah, monetization. I've done a lot of just thinking about how to fund my world and fund, help other people fund it with these things they eject into streams, and if you have a resource that people want in a messaging stream, how do you make money? I guess that question might have been more from an API standpoint than an actual building an app, but I think
the value is in the data. Ultimately, you really need to be providing a service that has fundamental value. You're dealing with scaling, you're dealing with processing, or the access to the data itself needs to be valuable, and that for me is where the money is, not injecting advertising into user streams. I don't think that's the way forward.
You just keep talking, man.
Okay. Well, I think that's time for me. I've actually got to.
No, I'll just go and pick the card up.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's all good.
Yeah, I'm gonna head. Okay, Ken.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, thank you for doing this, man. Honestly, I would like to do it more. Real quick, is what you're doing public knowledge? I didn't want to mention it if it wasn't.
Not yet.
All right.
25th, maybe.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to do this again then, because I wanna I wanna do a part 2 and talk about what you're gonna be up to. So I appreciate your time today, man. Thanks for playing with even with the technical difficulties.
Yeah, restart your Mac. I think that's the only solution.
Sounds like I'm on a Windows now. Anyways, thank you so much, sir. Cheers. Good to see you.